The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the endless western sky with shades of orange and pink. The wind whispered through the dry grass and scattered tumbleweeds, carrying with it the smell of dust and the faint aroma of pine from the distant mountains. In this vast, untamed land, life was both harsh and beautiful. Few dared to travel alone through these open plains, and those who did carried courage as their shield. Among them was a young Apache girl named Naya, whose small frame moved swiftly across the rugged terrain. She had dark, shining eyes that reflected both curiosity and caution, and a spirit far stronger than her years suggested. Naya had been traveling with her family, moving from one safe place to another to avoid conflict and danger. But on this particular day, fate had other plans. While gathering firewood near a rocky ridge, she had wandered slightly farther than she should have, drawn by the bright flutter of a hawk overhead. The distant cry of the bird had seemed harmless at first, but soon she realized that she had lost sight of her family. Panic pressed against her chest as the wind carried a strange, rough laughter toward her. From behind a cluster of rocks, a group of bandits appeared, their faces cruel and eyes sharp with hunger for trouble. They had been lurking near the edge of the forest, waiting for travelers to pass. And now Naya had unwittingly become their prey. She froze for a moment, her heart hammering against her ribcage, then turned to run. But the bandits were faster, and in seconds they had surrounded her, blocking any escape. Fear surged through her, but she refused to give in entirely. Even in this desperate moment, she remembered the lessons her parents had taught her. Stay calm, look for chances, and never lose hope. "Where do you think you're going, little girl?" One of the men sneered, stepping closer. His shadow fell over her small form, and she flinched. "You're coming with us, quietly." Naya swallowed her fear and tried to back away, but the rocky ground and the suddenness of the attack left her trapped. Just as one of the bandits reached to grab her arm, the sharp crack of a gunshot split the evening air. The man yelped and stumbled back, clutching his shoulder, while the others turned in shock. From the ridge above, a figure emerged, a tall, rugged man with a wide-brimmed hat and a leather coat that had seen countless rides across the plains. In his hands he held a rifle, steady and unwavering. "Let the girl go," he commanded in a voice that carried both authority and calmness, the kind of voice that made people think twice about challenging him. The bandits hesitated, glancing at each other nervously. They had seen men with guns before, but there was something different about this one. His eyes were sharp and steady, showing no fear, no hesitation. And though he was a stranger, his presence filled the air with the promise of danger for anyone who dared oppose him. One of the men tried to lunge at him, but the cowboy was faster. In a blur of movement, he fired again, forcing the attackers to scatter in panic. Naya watched in awe as the man moved with confidence and precision, each action deliberate as if he had faced danger his entire life. Within moments, the bandits were gone, disappearing into the shadows of the hills, leaving behind only the echoes of their anger and fear. The cowboy approached Naya cautiously, his rifle now lowered but still ready. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softer now, filled with concern rather than command. Naya nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. I think so. Thank you," she said, her voice small but sincere. "You're safe now," he replied, offering a reassuring smile. "Name's Jack Carson." "What's yours, little one?" "Naya," she said, her eyes still wide with awe. "Naya, She paused, unsure of what to say next. Her thoughts were tangled with relief, fear, and something she didn't yet understand, gratitude that felt like it might burst out of her chest. Jack nodded, kneeling slightly to be closer to her level. "Naya, I need you to stay close to me. Can you do that?" "Yes," she whispered, following his lead as he began to guide her down the ridge and toward the safer path that led to the distant forest where her family might be. As they walked, Jack noticed the scratches on her arms and the small tears in her clothes, signs of her struggle. "You've been through a lot," he said gently. "But you're strong. You kept your head clear. That's why you're still standing." Naya glanced at him, surprised by his words. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that before. Most adults had either scolded her for wandering or ignored her entirely. But Jack's words carried a respect that made her chest swell with an unfamiliar warmth. She wanted to say more, to explain her fear and her thanks, but the words stuck in her throat, tangled with emotions she was only beginning to understand. The ride back toward safety was slow. Jack didn't rush her, allowing her to catch her breath and regain composure. The evening air was cool now, brushing against her face and carrying the faint scent of pine and distant river water. Naya felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. For the first time in her life, she had encountered someone whose courage matched her own spirit, someone who had risked everything to save her. As the shadows lengthened and the first stars began to twinkle in the wide sky, Jack finally spoke again. "You're brave, Naya, braver than you realize, and you'll need that bravery in the days ahead." Naya looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. I don't know how to repay you," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "You saved my life. How can I ever thank you?" Jack shook his head with a modest smile. "No need for thanks. Just promise me one thing, you'll stay safe. Life out here is hard, but it can be good if you make it so." They reached the edge of the forest just as the last light of day disappeared, and Naya could see her village in the distance. Relief washed over her, and she turned toward Jack, wanting to say more, to express the depth of her gratitude. But the words felt too heavy for the moment. Instead, she simply nodded, her eyes shining. Jack tipped his hat slightly. "Go to your people, Naya, you're safe now. Remember what I said. Stay brave." With a mixture of hesitation and trust, Naya stepped forward, running toward her family waiting in the clearing beyond the trees. She glanced back just once, catching sight of Jack standing alone on the ridge, the wind tugging at his coat, his silhouette framed against the darkening sky. For reasons she didn't yet understand, her heart ached at the thought of leaving him behind. Jack watched her go, feeling a strange tug in his chest. He had saved many lives before, faced danger countless times, but there was something about this girl, her courage, her spirit, the way she looked at the world with both fear and hope, that lingered in his mind. He knew he would remember her, not just as the girl he rescued, but as someone who had shown him a glimpse of something rare and precious in this rough land. By the time Naya reached her family, night had fully fallen. Her parents rushed to embrace her, tears streaming down their faces as they thanked the stars for her safety. She could barely speak, still shaken from the encounter but filled with relief. Deep down, however, she carried a secret sense of admiration and connection toward the cowboy who had saved her, a bond that time would only make stronger, though she didn't yet know it. That night, as the village settled into quiet under the endless sky, Naya lay on her simple cot, thinking of the man with the kind eyes and steady hands. She had no way of knowing what the future would bring, but she carried within her a spark of hope and courage that had been kindled by Jack's bravery. And somewhere, far away, Jack Carson rode alone through the plains, thinking of a small Apache girl who had changed his evening, and perhaps unknowingly a part of his heart. In that quiet, vast world of endless skies and whispering winds, two lives had intersected briefly yet profoundly, and though they were separated by distance and circumstance, the memory of that day and the courage shared between them would echo for many years to come. The years passed slowly for Naya. Life in her village followed the rhythm of the seasons, the quiet routines of daily work, and the ancient traditions passed down by her family. She grew from a small, frightened girl into a young woman of remarkable strength and wisdom. Yet, even as she learned the ways of her people, the memory of that day, the day the cowboy had saved her, never left her. Sometimes it came unbidden, in the flicker of the firelight, in the sound of a distant hawk, or in the rush of wind through the grass. Jack Carson, the man who had stepped out of the wilderness and into her life, lingered in her thoughts like a gentle echo she could not ignore. Her family noticed the change in her as she grew. Naya was quiet, thoughtful, and strong, with eyes that seemed to look beyond the hills and rivers surrounding their home. Her mother, wise and caring, would often say, "You carry the spirit of the wind, Naya. It moves where it wishes, but it never forgets the path it has traveled." Naya understood these words in ways her mother did not fully realize. The path that had brought her to safety, guided by the cowboy's steady hands, was a memory she cherished and a part of herself she would never forget. Meanwhile, Jack Carson continued his own journey across the vast western plains. He moved from town to town, taking odd jobs, working on ranches, and sometimes hunting for game. He was respected and feared in equal measure for his skill with a rifle and his calm, measured courage. Yet, despite the many encounters with danger and the countless people whose lives he touched, the memory of Naya remained with him in the quiet moments of the night. He would recall her dark eyes, the small frame trembling in fear yet radiating bravery, and the way she had trusted him so completely. That single moment, small though it seemed, had left a lasting mark on his heart. Years passed. The world around them changed slowly, but for Naya and Jack, life's current pulled them in different directions. Naya learned the ways of her people, mastering skills in tracking, crafting, and understanding the land. She grew into a young woman with confidence and determination, admired by her peers for her courage and intelligence. Yet there was a part of her that always longed for something more, a connection, a story unfinished. She often wondered about the cowboy who had saved her, hoping that, somewhere, he too remembered the girl who had once trusted him completely. As Naya matured, she began to understand the complexity of the world beyond her village. She learned that bravery was not only in facing immediate danger, but also in making choices, taking risks, and following one's heart. She thought often of Jack, the man who had risked his life for hers, and she realized that his courage had inspired her in ways she could not yet fully explain. His example had taught her to face fear with steadiness, to trust in the goodness of others, and to believe that even in a harsh world, kindness and bravery could change the course of a life. Jack, on the other hand, continued to face the challenges of the frontier. He met other travelers, helped those in need, and often found himself in dangerous situations. Yet through every encounter, he carried with him a quiet longing for something he could not name. In the evenings, when the plains were silent and the stars filled the sky, he would think of Naya. He remembered the way she had looked at him, the small but undeniable spark of strength in her eyes, and the courage that had allowed her to survive against the odds. Though decades had passed, that memory remained vivid, a light in the often harsh and lonely world he inhabited. The separation between them was not just physical. It was a distance of time, of experience, of different worlds. Naya lived within her community, surrounded by family and traditions, while Jack moved through the vast open plains, his life shaped by survival and adventure. Yet both felt the quiet pull of destiny, the unspoken bond created in a single extraordinary moment years before. It was as if the land itself had remembered them, keeping their stories intertwined even as they followed separate paths. One afternoon, as Naya walked along a riverbank near her village, watching the sunlight dance across the water, she thought again of Jack. She recalled his voice, calm and reassuring, and the steady way he had guided her to safety. Her heart ached with a mix of gratitude, admiration, and curiosity. She wondered where he was, what he was doing, and whether he remembered the girl whose life he had saved. She felt a strange certainty deep within her, a feeling that their story was not yet finished, that the paths they had traveled separately were meant to converge once more. At the same time, Jack found himself in a small frontier town, repairing a fence at a ranch that had offered him work. As he hammered the wooden posts into place, he felt the familiar tug of memory. The image of Naya flashed in his mind, her dark eyes, the courage she had shown, the fragile trust she had placed in him. He shook his head, attempting to focus on his work, but the memory refused to fade. It was as though that single act of saving her had planted a seed, a quiet reminder of the power of human connection and the unexpected ways lives could intersect. Life continued, carrying both of them forward. Naya grew stronger, more confident, and more determined to live fully. She learned to navigate the challenges of her community, to make difficult decisions, and to take responsibility for her own path. Yet, even as she embraced her life and her people, the memory of Jack remained a soft but persistent presence in her heart. She often wondered if destiny would ever allow their paths to cross again. Jack, too, continued to navigate the unpredictability of the frontier. He helped those in need, faced danger with unwavering courage, and built a life shaped by his choices and experiences. Yet in quiet moments he often thought of Naya. He remembered her as the girl who had faced fear with remarkable bravery, who had trusted him completely, and who had left an indelible mark on his heart. He could not explain why, even after so many years, the memory lingered so vividly, but he knew it was something he would carry with him always. As the seasons turned, both Naya and Jack felt the subtle, persistent pull of fate. Though separated by distance and circumstance, they shared an invisible connection, a thread that tied their lives together. Naya dreamed of the day she might see him again, wondering if he remembered her and whether he, too, had felt the quiet bond that had formed so long ago. Jack, meanwhile, held on to the memory of her trust and courage, sensing that their story was not yet complete. that the vast plains of the West still held a surprise for them both. In the evenings, as the stars blanketed the sky, Naya would sometimes sit by the fire and think of Jack. She imagined what he looked like now, older perhaps, more experienced, but still carrying the strength and kindness she had once seen. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the man who had saved her life, and a quiet hope that one day their paths would meet again. She did not know how it would happen, or when, but she felt certain that fate had a plan for them both. Jack, riding alone across the plains or working on distant ranches, would sometimes pause to look at the horizon, thinking of a small Apache girl with dark, shining eyes and a spirit that had inspired him long ago. He could not explain why she lingered in his thoughts, but he knew it was more than a simple memory. It was as if the land itself had woven their stories together, keeping them connected even across the vast distances and years that separated them. And so, life went on for both Naya and Jack. Naya grew into a woman of remarkable courage and wisdom, carrying the memory of her rescue with pride and gratitude. Jack continued his journey across the wild, untamed West, always remembering the girl who had changed his life in a single, extraordinary moment. Though separated by time and distance, both felt the quiet pull of destiny, the invisible thread that tied their lives together and promised that, one day, their paths would cross once more. Through the years, the memory of that day, the sun setting over the plains, the sound of gunfire, the fear and relief remained vivid in both of their hearts. It shaped their choices, their courage, and their understanding of the world. And though they could not yet see it, the story of their connection was far from over. The winds of fate were moving, carrying them toward a reunion that would test their courage, their hearts, and the bond formed so long ago on that sunlit ridge. 20 years had passed since that fateful day on the sunlit ridge. The land had changed, and so had the people. Small frontier towns had grown into bustling communities, ranches had expanded, and the distant mountains now seemed even more majestic under the endless sky. Yet for Naya, nothing had changed about the memory that had lingered in her heart all these years, the memory of the cowboy who had saved her life. That memory had never faded. Instead, it had grown stronger with time, carrying with it a quiet hope that one day she would see him again. Naya had grown into a remarkable young woman. She was strong, intelligent, and full of determination, with a beauty that came not from appearances alone, but from the courage and wisdom she carried within. She had mastered the skills her people taught her, tracking, hunting, and understanding the land. But more than anything, she had learned to trust herself and her instincts. And yet, despite all her growth, the memory of Jack Carson lingered, a constant whisper in the quiet moments of her life. One morning, she made a decision that would change everything. She could no longer allow herself to wonder or wait. She would find him. She would tell him the truth, that she was the girl he had saved so many years ago, and that she had come for him not merely to thank him, but because her heart had never forgotten him. The thought made her both nervous and exhilarated. She did not know how he would react or if he would even remember her, but the certainty in her chest pushed her forward. The journey was long and challenging. Naya traveled across plains, rivers, and hills, relying on her knowledge of the land and her unwavering determination. She slept under the stars, listened to the wind, and allowed the rhythm of the land to guide her steps. Every night she imagined what it would be like to see Jack again, to stand before the man who had changed her life. Would he recognize her? Would he remember her as clearly as she remembered him? The question swirled in her mind, but she pressed on, driven by a hope she could not deny. Meanwhile, Jack Carson lived his life unaware that Naya was seeking him. He had settled in a small town that had grown along a riverbank, working on a ranch and helping the community where he could. Though he had faced countless dangers and met many travelers in his years, he still carried the memory of Naya with him. Occasionally, he would think of the small Apache girl with the dark, shining eyes and the quiet courage that had struck him so deeply. He had never forgotten her, but life had continued, and he had learned to keep that memory tucked away, like a secret treasure. One late afternoon, as Jack was repairing a corral fence, he noticed a figure approaching from the horizon. At first, he paid little attention, assuming it was a traveler passing through. But as the figure drew closer, he felt a strange familiarity, a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. The woman who now approached was tall and confident, with a grace that came from years of experience and strength. Her eyes, however, were what truly caught his attention, dark, deep, and filled with a spark that he recognized instantly. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He had seen those eyes before 2 decades ago, when they had looked up at him with trust and hope in the midst of fear. Could it really be her? He dropped the hammer he had been using and stepped closer, his pulse quickening as he struggled to believe what he was seeing. "Naya," he asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and hope. The woman stopped a few steps away, her own heartbeat racing. She nodded slowly, a shy smile breaking across her face. "Yes," she said softly. "It's me. I'm the girl you saved. 20 years ago." Jack took a step back, trying to absorb the truth. You're the girl from that day?" His voice was almost a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile moment. He studied her carefully, seeing the strength and beauty she had gained over the years, yet recognizing the same spirit he had remembered. Naya smiled, feeling a wave of relief and joy. "I never forgot you," she admitted. "I thought about you often. And I came to find you." For a long moment they simply looked at each other, two souls connected by a memory that had spanned decades. The wind stirred around them, rustling the tall grass and carrying the distant sounds of the town. But for Jack and Naya, the world seemed to shrink to that single moment. Jack finally spoke, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I remember you, Naya. I've never forgotten you. I thought about you many times over the years, wondering if you were safe, wondering if you were happy." Naya felt a lump in her throat. "I am safe now. Thanks to you, and I wanted to thank you properly. But more than that," she hesitated, searching for the right words to express the depth of her feelings. "I wanted to tell you that you changed my life. You saved me, and that day, it stayed with me. All these years I've carried it in my heart." Jack stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Naya, I didn't know I could make such a difference in someone's life. I just did what I had to do." "You did more than that," she said gently. "You gave me hope. You gave me courage. You showed me that even in a world so harsh, kindness and bravery exist, and I've never stopped thinking about you." Jack's heart ached with a mixture of surprise and a joy he had not expected. He realized that the bond they had shared so briefly on that ridge had grown silently over the years, stretching across distance and time, and now it was alive again, stronger than ever. "Naya, I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice soft but full of feeling. "You don't need to say anything yet," she replied with a gentle smile. "I just wanted you to know, and to see you again. That's all I need for now." As they stood there, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting golden light across the plains, a sense of peace settled over them. The town in the distance, the noise of everyday life, and the passage of time all seemed to fade away. In that moment it was just Jack and Naya, two people whose lives had been forever intertwined by a single act of courage and trust. The townspeople soon noticed the reunion. Whispers traveled through the streets, curiosity and astonishment mixing with admiration. Some recognized Jack as a man of bravery and skill, while others marveled at the young woman who had returned after so many years. Yet, despite the attention and the murmurs, Jack and Naya remained focused on each other, as if the rest of the world had disappeared. Over the next few days, they spent time together, walking along the riverbank, talking about the years that had passed, and sharing stories of the paths they had each taken. Naya spoke of her life in the village, her growth, and the lessons she had learned. Jack listened intently, occasionally sharing his own adventures, the challenges he had faced and the quiet moments when he had thought of her. With each story, the bond between them grew stronger, weaving together the memories of the past with the possibilities of the future. Though the reunion brought immense joy, it was not without its challenges. Both Naya and Jack had lived full lives, shaped by experiences that neither could fully erase. There were moments of hesitation, questions about the future, and the unspoken awareness that life could still be unpredictable. Yet through it all, the connection they shared, born of courage, trust, and fate, remained unbroken. They found comfort in each other's presence, and slowly, the walls built by time and distance began to fall away. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains and the sky turned shades of pink and purple, Naya turned to Jack and said softly, "I came back for a reason. Jack, not just to see you, but to tell you that my heart has never forgotten you. I wanted to give us a chance if you'll let me." Jack's eyes softened, his voice full of emotion. "Naya, I've never forgotten you either. That day changed my life as much as it changed yours. I can't promise I have all the answers, but I know that I want to explore this, whatever this is, with you." Naya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The fear and uncertainty that had accompanied her journey melted away, replaced by a sense of hope and possibility. For the first time in 20 years, she felt complete, as if a chapter of her life that had been paused had finally resumed. As the stars began to appear in the sky, they stood side by side, looking out over the plains that had once separated them. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. Two lives, once separated by time and distance, had finally found their way back to each other. And though the future was still uncertain, both Naya and Jack knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, strengthened by the bond formed in a moment of courage, trust, and destiny. The days after their reunion were filled with quiet, yet profound moments for Jack and Naya. They spent long hours together, walking along the riverbanks, exploring the small town, and even venturing into the wide open plains that stretched endlessly around them. Every conversation seemed to draw them closer, weaving the past and present into a delicate tapestry of trust, understanding, and unspoken emotion. Naya felt both excitement and nervousness. After all, it had been 20 years since Jack had rescued her, and now she faced the delicate task of bridging their separate lives. One afternoon, Jack and Naya found themselves on a hill overlooking the town. The sun was high in the sky, casting golden light over the rooftops and the flowing river. Jack leaned on the fence at the hill's edge, his eyes following the distant horizon as if he were trying to find the right words. Naya stood beside him, her hands lightly brushing against his as she held back her eagerness to speak first. "You've grown so much," Jack said finally, his voice soft. "I can hardly believe this is the same girl I rescued all those years ago. You're strong, confident, different in the best way possible." Naya smiled, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "I had to grow up quickly," she admitted. "Those years, they taught me a lot. And I kept thinking of that day and of you. I wanted to be brave like you were." Jack turned to her, his gaze steady and full of admiration. "You were brave that day, Naya. I only helped. The courage was always yours." For a moment, the wind rustled the grass around them, carrying with it a sense of serenity and timelessness. Then Naya spoke, her voice trembling slightly but filled with honesty. "I've thought about you often. All these years, I wondered if you ever remembered me, if you thought about what happened. And I realized I couldn't let another day go by without finding you, without telling you the truth about my feelings." Jack's heart tightened. The depth of her words reached him in a way he had not anticipated. He had remembered her, yes, but he had never imagined that she would seek him out, that her life would be guided by the memory of their encounter. "Naya, I have thought about you, more than I realized. And now, seeing you again, I feel like something I didn't even know was missing has been found." Their conversation opened a door to the past, and over the next few days they began to share their stories more openly. Naya spoke of her childhood in the village, the challenges she had faced, the lessons she had learned, and the strength she had developed. Jack listened with a mixture of awe and respect, realizing that the girl he had saved had grown into a woman of remarkable character and resilience. Jack, in turn, shared his own story. He told Naya about the years he had spent traveling the frontier, the people he had met, and the dangers he had faced. He spoke of the quiet moments when he had remembered her, and how those memories had shaped him, reminding him that even in a harsh world, acts of kindness could leave a lasting mark. Naya listened, her eyes wide with fascination, realizing that the man she had admired from afar had also carried her memory in his heart. Though their bond was strong, it was not without challenges. The cultural differences between their lives, the years of separation, and the expectations of those around them all created obstacles. Some in the town whispered about their reunion, curious or skeptical of the sudden closeness between the Apache woman and the respected cowboy. Naya herself struggled with moments of doubt, wondering if Jack could truly understand the life she had lived, the hardships she had faced, and the traditions that shaped her identity. One evening, as they sat by the river under a sky full of stars, Naya spoke her fears aloud. "Jack, I know we have a connection, but I worry. Can we really be together? Our lives have been so different. I don't want to lose what we have because I didn't understand your world or you didn't understand mine. Jack took her hands in his, looking deeply into her eyes. Naya, I don't expect us to be perfect. Our lives have been different, yes, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from each other. We've already overcome so much just to find each other again. What matters now is that we face the future together, with honesty and courage. Naya felt a surge of relief and warmth. His words reassured her, reminding her of the very courage he had inspired in her years ago. You're right, she said softly. We've come this far. We can face what's ahead together. With that shared understanding, they began to build a deeper connection. They explored the surrounding land together, hunting game, checking on livestock, and learning more about each other's worlds. Jack taught Naya skills he had learned over the years, while Naya shared the knowledge of her people, teaching Jack how to read the land in ways he had never known. Through these shared experiences, their respect and admiration for each other grew, strengthening the bond that had first formed in fear and gratitude so long ago. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Jack and Naya became increasingly apparent to those around them. People in the town began to accept their closeness, recognizing the respect, trust, and affection that defined their relationship. Yet, there were still moments of challenge, small misunderstandings, lingering doubts, and the occasional remark from those who didn't fully understand the depth of their connection. Through it all, Jack and Naya faced each challenge together, learning to communicate openly, support each other, and respect the differences that made their lives unique. One afternoon, while tending to a small garden behind Jack's home, Naya paused to look at him. Jack, I never thought I'd see you again, and now, I can't imagine my life without you. Jack smiled, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Naya, I feel the same. It's like the world has been leading us to this moment all along. I may not have known it then, but I know it now. You're a part of my life, and I don't want to lose that again. The sincerity in his voice touched Naya deeply. She realized that their connection was not just about the past or the act of saving her life. It was about the respect, trust, and love that had grown between them over the years. It was about the recognition that despite the challenges and the time apart, they were meant to face life's journey together. As evening approached, they sat together watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and pink. The wind carried the scent of pine and the distant river, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Naya rested her head on Jack's shoulder, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. I never thought this day would come, she whispered. Jack tightened his arm around her, feeling the truth in her words. Neither did I, he admitted. But now that it has, I don't want to let it go. We have a chance to write the rest of our story. Together. The challenges they faced did not disappear, but they became easier to manage because they faced them side by side. Naya found strength in Jack's steadiness and courage, while Jack found inspiration in Naya's resilience and wisdom. Together, they began to envision a future where their lives, once separate, could merge into a shared path filled with love, respect, and shared purpose. In these days of reflection, conversation, and shared experiences, Naya and Jack discovered something profound. The past, with all its memories and experiences, was not a chain that held them back, but a foundation upon which they could build their future. The act of bravery that had brought them together years ago was only the beginning. What mattered now was the trust, respect, and love that had grown between them, a bond strong enough to weather any challenge the world might bring. And so, as night fell over the plains and the stars shimmered in the endless sky, Jack and Naya sat together, their hands intertwined, hearts aligned and spirits connected. They had faced the past, shared their stories, and begun to understand each other in ways that transcended time and distance. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every step. They knew that the days ahead would bring more challenges, differences to navigate, expectations to meet, and the uncertainties of life in the wild frontier. Yet in that moment they also knew that they had found something rare and precious, a bond forged in courage, trust, and love. And with that bond, they felt ready to face whatever the future might hold together as partners, friends, and perhaps something even deeper. The days following Jack and Naya's deeper understanding of each other were filled with quiet excitement and careful planning. They had faced their pasts, shared their stories, and built a strong foundation of trust, respect, and love. Now it was time to look forward, to imagine a life together, to take steps that would make their bond permanent and visible not only to themselves, but to the community around them. Naya had never felt this combination of anticipation and serenity. Jack, too, felt a sense of completeness he had never experienced before, as if a long, wandering journey had finally led him home. They began to talk about what it would mean to join their lives officially. In the town, marriages were often simple but meaningful affairs surrounded by friends, neighbors, and family. Naya, understanding the traditions of her own people, wanted to honor her culture as well, incorporating rituals and symbols that carried deep meaning. Jack, who had lived a life guided by practicality and courage, was willing to learn and embrace every part of her heritage. The discussions were sometimes long and sometimes quiet, filled with laughter, wonder, and occasional moments of hesitation, but each step strengthened the bond between them. One morning, as the sun rose over the plains and painted the landscape in soft gold, Jack and Naya walked through the small town hand in hand. They visited the town's blacksmith, the carpenter, and the local store, quietly sharing their plans with those who had supported them and respected their courage. Whispers and smiles followed them, but there were no objections, only curiosity and admiration. People could see the genuine connection between them, the way they moved together, the way they listened to each other, and the way they laughed, careful yet joyful. Naya's family was invited next. Her parents had been cautious at first, unsure of what it meant for their daughter to be joining a man from outside their village, someone from a very different world. But as they spent time with Jack, watching him treat Naya with respect, patience, and kindness, their hesitation melted. They saw the man who had once saved their daughter still carried courage and honor in his heart, a man worthy of their trust and love. Jack, in turn, had friends and neighbors who had long respected him for his bravery and fairness. When they learned about Naya and the story of her return, they were amazed but supportive. It was unusual, yes, for a woman from a distant culture to join a town, but they admired the honesty, bravery, and determination of both Jack and Naya. Slowly, the whispers of curiosity transformed into gestures of acceptance and encouragement. With preparations underway, Jack and Naya began to focus on the details that made the union meaningful to them. They chose a location on the edge of the plains, where the land opened up to endless sky and the river sparkled in the sunlight. It was a place that symbolized freedom, strength, and the vast possibilities of their shared life. Naya collected flowers from the surrounding hills, weaving them into garlands, while Jack worked to build a small platform and seating for those who would attend. Every detail was shaped by their combined vision, a blending of two worlds into one. The day of their union arrived with a sky so clear it seemed almost impossible to capture in words. Friends, neighbors, and family gathered, their faces filled with joy, curiosity, and quiet admiration. Jack wore his usual rugged attire, neat and careful, while Naya wore a simple but beautiful dress, adorned with symbols of her Apache heritage. The combination of cultures was not lost on anyone present. It was a celebration of respect, love, and courage that had withstood the tests of time and distance. As they stood side by side, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes, the significance of the moment struck them both. This was more than a ceremony. It was the culmination of decades of bravery, hope, and trust. It was the acknowledgement of a bond that had started with a single act of courage, survived the challenges of years, and had grown into something enduring and beautiful. Naya spoke first, her voice calm yet full of emotion. "Jack, 20 years ago you saved my life. You showed me courage, kindness, and hope. Today I stand before you not as the girl you rescued, but as the woman who has carried your memory in her heart, who has grown stronger because of it. I choose to be with you, to share my life, my dreams, and my heart." Jack felt a warmth in his chest that he could not describe. He had faced countless dangers and lived through many challenges, but no moment had ever felt as profound as this. "Naya," he said, his voice steady but tender. "I never imagined that the girl I saved would become the woman who would change my life. You have brought light, hope, and strength into my world. I choose to walk beside you, to share every challenge, every joy, and every day that comes our way." They exchanged simple but meaningful rings, crafted by a local jeweler, symbolizing the bond between them. Then, with the blessing of both her family and the town, they declared their union. A cheer rose from the gathered crowd, echoing across the plains and mixing with the soft whispers of the wind. Friends and family congratulated them, while Naya and Jack held on to each other, savoring the moment and the journey that had led them here. After the ceremony, they walked along the river, sharing a quiet moment alone. The water shimmered in the sunlight, and the wind carried the faint scent of wildflowers. Naya rested her head on Jack's shoulder, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. "It feels right," she whispered. "All the waiting, all the years. It feels like it led to this moment perfectly." Jack wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "It does," he agreed. "And now we begin a new chapter. We've faced the past and we've found each other again. Nothing can take this from us." In the days that followed, Jack and Naya settled into their shared life. They managed the ranch together, learned from each other, and continued to respect and embrace their different backgrounds. Naya introduced Jack to the traditions of her people, teaching him their ways of honoring the land and understanding its rhythms. Jack shared his knowledge of the plains, the skills of survival, and the wisdom he had gained through years of experience. Together they built a life that honored both the past and the present, creating a future full of hope, love, and shared purpose. The town, once curious and cautious, began to accept them fully. Their story became an inspiration, a reminder that courage, trust, and love could overcome distance, differences, and years of separation. Children would sometimes approach them, asking about the story of the brave cowboy and the Apache girl, and Jack and Naya would smile, sharing lessons about bravery, kindness, and the power of human connection. Naya and Jack also took time for quiet reflection, remembering the journey that had brought them together. They would often sit together in the evenings, watching the stars and speaking of the past, the challenges they had faced, and the dreams they held for the future. In those moments, they felt an unspoken understanding, a recognition that their love was rooted not just in passion, but in mutual respect, shared courage, and the unwavering bond forged in a single, extraordinary moment many years ago. Years later, as they continued to live and grow together, Jack and Naya often thought back to the day they first met. The memory of danger, fear, and bravery remained vivid, but it was no longer a memory of fear alone. It was a memory of hope, trust, and the beginning of a story that had led them to this life. They understood now that life's twists and turns, the hardships, and the years of separation had not kept them apart. They had only strengthened the bond that fate had placed between them. Through it all, Naya and Jack never lost sight of the lessons they had learned. Bravery is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Trust is not given lightly, but earned through respect and honesty. And love, when nurtured carefully, can withstand the trials of time, distance, and difference. Their story became a testament to these truths, an example to all who knew them that even in a harsh and unpredictable world, love and courage could flourish. And so, as the sun set over the plains, casting long shadows across the land and painting the sky in hues of golden rose, Jack and Naya stood side by side. Hand in hand, hearts aligned, and spirits intertwined, they faced the future together. Their journey had begun with a single act of bravery, had endured years of separation, and had grown into a love that was steadfast, deep, and enduring. They knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, strengthened by the bond formed so many years ago and sustained by the courage, trust, and love that had guided them every step of the way. Their life together was not just a continuation of the past, it was a new beginning. Every day they built memories, faced challenges, and celebrated victories. Every moment became a testament to the power of hope, the strength of resilience, and the beauty of a love that had waited patiently, across time and distance, to be fully realized. And as the stars emerged one by one in the vast western sky, Jack and Naya knew that their story was not just about the past, it was about every day they would share, every challenge they would overcome, and every joy they would celebrate together, as partners, companions, and soulmates united by fate and the unwavering bond of their hearts.